Hi, welcome to this DCP Web Blender 2.8 beginners tutorial. Let's continue where we left off last time. So we'll open up Blender and we're on version 5 at the moment. Let's do a quick recap. We'll go into the render view here and we're on the first frame right here. So we've got our camera blur, then it's gonna the blur is gonna refocus and then it's gonna fly through this scene, and we've got our fluid dynamic there that we did in the last tutorial, and we've got this alien text. So let's work on this alien text. So at the moment, really at around, let's have a look here. So what we want is the fluid to flow up, and I reckon that's sort of around this point here where we can see like this splash sort of thing, right? Really we should turn on our overlays just to make things a bit easier. So around frame, I reckon around frame 380, around here, we want the text to start to appear. So this is quite simple. Let's hit the record button and we'll move this text so that it's under the ground, and then we'll take that keyframe. Let's see here, really we want the text to start to appear here, right? So let's move it up to around here, somewhere here, and then by frame we really want it to be about a second, right? So that will be 380, let's say, or even less than a second. Let's say around frame 450. Let's see, let's do the real maths. So 380, what we're running 60 frames, right? 440. So at frame 440, that would be exactly 1 second because we're running at 60 frames a second. Save it. We'll drag this text so that it shows, and then we want it to be quite close to the water fluid. So to make sure we're doing that, let's press number 7. Number 7 will take us to the side view, and we need to hide the background here. Not number 7, number 3. So press number 3 on the keyboard. That will take us to the side view. And let's go into the wireframe. We can see the wireframe, and we can see the text is going to move up, but it's probably a little bit too high. We want it to be like almost inside this fluid a little bit, like here. So a little bit above, almost like one of these little square boxes right here, yeah? Above this green line, somewhere around here. Then let's go back into our render view and let's press 0 to see the camera, and let's see what that looks like. So that should be okay. And then on the frame just before this, frame 379, we want to drag the text all the way down here. So from the beginning the text will be hidden like the fluid, and then the fluid will show, and then this text will come up like this, right? So it'll be quite dynamic, it'll look pretty cool. Now let's sort out the camera. So let's click on the camera. We can see on frame 420, that's where the camera finishes its movement. So from 420 to 480, which will be another second here, we want to rotate this camera around. We want to do something with it, right? So we want to move it so that we can see it almost looking down towards this text a little bit. Let's just for now turn on our background, and then let's go to File, Save As, and let's save it as version 6, right? Save it as version 6. Then we want to press the letter N on our keyboard, and in theory we don't really need to do that, right? So actually we can use the tools here. So we want the camera to be higher up, so let's move the camera up a little bit, not too high, something like this, and then we want to rotate it on the x-axis looking down towards the this text and the fluid, right? So we want it down at an angle, so around here, and we want to bring it up a bit more so the text is almost centered in the screen. I reckon that's going to look pretty cool right there. So let's press N on our keyboard, and we can see that. So as the camera flies in, it's going to fly in pretty low, and then it's going to raise up like this, and we'll see our fluid doing its business. This the fluid here, and I think that's going to be pretty good around here. Okay, so we set up the camera, we moved it to the right position. I think this is pretty good. And we've got this like 480 to 600. So we've got, let's see, 80 frames, right? To work with at the end to do something. So we need to decide what we're going to do. I think what will look cool, which is only about a second, right? So let's see. Yeah, so 480. Let's just do the maths. We've got 2 seconds, right? So there's a few different things we could do. Let's see. We want some particles or something going on in here, right? So I think what I might do, seeing as this fluid is still moving at the end frames here, we might extend that end frame. So let's set this to something like 2 seconds, right? So another 2 will be another 120. So let's set it to 720. Let's see if our fluid is still moving here. Yeah, so I think that's going to look pretty good. So let's see. We'll click on our text. So our text ends here. Let's click on the camera to see where the last frame is on the camera. So the camera stops moving at frame 450. So what we want to do is give this fluid a little bit of time to do something. So let's go to that frame. Where are we on this? Frame 480. So let's say a second. So 480 plus 60 will be 540. So 540. All we want to do here is move the camera slightly. So let's move that camera. So we'll click on object data and we want to move it on the Z axis. So we'll move it down slightly and rotate it upwards. So just a slight movement here. We don't really want too much things to be still, right? And then on this frame here, we're going to go to File, Save, click on the text, and this text object, let's untick the record button for a minute. We're going to go to Object, in fact, let's go to File, Save As, and let's save this as version 7, because we're going to add some more stuff to it. So on the text object, we're going to select it, go to Object, Convert to a Mesh, so that's a mesh object. With that mesh object selected, we want to go to the particle emitter, particles, and create new. So now we've got a new 1000 particles being emitted from this text object. We should see them somewhere here. We don't really see them, so let's see what's going on here. Let's have a look. So start frame, end frame 200. So it's starting on the first frame and ending on frame 200. So the particles are being emitted somewhere down here. You can see the red line here, right? So we want to start the particle emission. Let's go to the camera. Let's press 0 to see what the camera sees. And the camera is on frame 540. So we want to start the particles on frame 540 and end them on frame 700, I think. Well, we'll work that out in a moment. So let's at least start them at frame 540. So we'll click on the text alien, or this alien text, go to the particle simulation here and start it on frame 540. And we can't type 540 because the end frame is less than that. So we need to set this to something like 700 for now and set this to 540. And that will work. So we should see particles. Now you can see these little dots coming out of the this alien text, and I think we're going to need to make this, let's see, where can we get to, around, let's set this to around 900. I don't know if we get away with that with the fluid, but let's see. $950. Let's set it to 950. Let's use as much as we can. 950. So really our final animation is going to be 950 frames divided by 60 per second. So it's going to be about 15 seconds long, which is quite long, but you know, you can shorten this down, I guess, by repositioning where the camera starts. You can start the camera here at the beginning rather than all the way back there to reduce the frames. So what we want to do here, we've got the particles here. Let's go to frame 540. 540, that's where the particles start. We'll click on this text alien, and what we would do is go to the let's go to the field weights here, set the gravity to 0, set the velocity here to 0 as well, and that will basically make these particles stick to this object. That's what they're doing now, so they're not going to really move anywhere. Then we'll press Shift A to insert a UV sphere. So we've got this little sphere here. Let's just move it up to the top here so we can see it clearly. We'll press S to scale it, and we're going to scale it down. So right now it's roughly 0.5. Let's set it to 0.5. So we set all of these to 0.5. The X, the Y, and the Z. 0.5. We can adjust that afterwards if we want. We will then, we will then go to the material. I'm going to experiment here a little bit. Go to the material and we'll set, let's see, material. If you don't see anything in here, just wait a second or move your mouse up here or up here. And we'll set it to, let's try material 1 for now. And we might change that afterwards. We'll click back on this alien text. And we'll go to the particle simulation here. And then we'll go to the render settings. And what we would do is set it from halo to object. So we'll set it to an object here. We'll go to the object data and we'll set it to, let's give this thing a proper name. It's called sphere here. Let's call it particle. So we rename that to particle. Go back to the text here. In the particle settings, underneath the render, we set it to an object, and then this object here we'll set it to particle here. Then we'll get these spheres appearing, and now we want to, let's see, we want to press Shift A, and we'll insert a wind object here, wind. And right now, if we rotate around, this yellow arrow represents the direction of the wind. So if we were to play this, the particles are now going upwards. We don't want that. So on frame 540, we want them going towards the camera. So we want to rotate this wind object, the force field. So in here, it's called field at the moment. So rename it field wind. Put wind there because then we know what it is. And we want to go to its object data and rotate it on the x-axis. Let's see, rotation here on the x by 90 degrees. So now you can see the yellow arrow is pointing this way. If we just move it behind the object, it's a little bit easier to see sometimes. So we can move it like around here, bring it up a little bit. So the wind is pointing this way. That means our particles are now going to flow towards the camera. Let's go to frame 540. That's where it will start. If we press 0 and then go back to the alien text here and go to the particle settings, if we move up, we can now extend these particles, right? So they end at frame 700, where they stop emitting at frame 700. So let's set the lifetime to, I reckon, around 130. And then we'll stop them from being emitted at around 760. The way you can work this out is, this is frame 540. This red line represents how many particles, or not necessarily how many, but how long they're going to live for, right? So it starts at frame 540 and it's going to stop emitting particles at frame 760, but those particles will last up to 130 frames. So really 760 plus 130 should take you to around this 900 marker right here, right? Now you can see these particles are flowing forwards, but we don't have enough of them, so we want to set this to 10. Let's see, let's set it to something like for now 10,000. And then let's go down to the scale here. Let's set this to random, and we'll make them a little bit bigger. Let's make them like 0.3 here. And let's press F12 and render it. Now we've got these little spheres coming out of this object, right? And we need more of them. We need way more, because we're going to cover this object, and really I don't think those spheres look right to me, so we're going to probably change their material. So let's try and change the material now. We'll go to particle here and go to material, and let's set it to one of the other ones. Let's set it to, probably the black isn't a good idea. Let's try and set it to this purple color and render it. I still don't like that, so what we would do, let's try this blue color. Right, so what we're going to do is we'll remove this material from the particle here. So particle, let's remove the material, and we'll create a new one for it, and we'll set it to an emission shader, and we'll increase its strength a little bit. Let's set it to like 2.5, something like this. I think that's a bit too much, isn't it? Let's set it to maybe 1.5. Let's render that. I think that's going to be okay. Okay, so what we want to do is go to our wind object, this field called wind, and we'll go to the physics here and set the strength to 10. So now these particles are going to flow much faster, right? Or the wind's going to push them much quicker towards the camera, like this. And then we want to we can either add some brownian, or we can add a actually let's do that anyway. So let's go to the text field, this text alien text here. Let's press Ctrl S to save it. We'll go to the particle settings, and inside of the physics, where's physics gone? Physics here. We'll set the brownian to something like 5. Let's set it to 5. And that will just randomize it a little bit more. Now you can see they're moving a bit more random rather than all being uniform. And then what we can do is press Shift A and insert a, where are we, turbulence, and then let's see, it's going to be called field here, right? Field. So let's name that to turbulence field. Just give it a good name. Then we'll go to the physics here for the turbulence and set that to around, let's set that to around 5 for the minute. And let's render it out somewhere like here. Press F12. And then we're going to have all these particles flying out from this object. They look, let's try setting it to a different material. So let's go back to the particles and set the material. Let's try it at a different one. Let's try on this purple color, see, F12. So for me that just doesn't look right. So I don't think we use that. And we can create more materials if we want, but let's try the, what about the fluid domain material? No, I think we was better off with the emission shader. And maybe we'll change this to like a blue color, something like this. We can play around with the strength here as well. Let's set it up quite high to something like 10. Maybe this sphere up here, see this sphere here? So if we click on the particle, that's the sphere. If we press S to scale it down, let's scale it down in size to make these particles a bit more smaller. And I think that will look a lot better. Then what we'll do is press, let's go to the background and turn it off. Then we can press number 7 and see it from the top view. We'll zoom out a little bit here. Let's just get it here. This is our camera down here, and these are the particles flowing towards the camera. So they start flowing at around 540, right? 540, what is it? 540 here. Let's press Shift A, and we want to insert a Leonard Jones, and we're going to drag that down, and we're going to have one in the center here. Press Shift A again and insert another one, or we can just press actually Shift D to duplicate it. So Shift and D will duplicate that Leonard Jones. We'll put one on this side, and then Shift D again, and we put one on this side over here. Then the center one, we'll click on it, and they're all going to be called fields in here. So let's call it field, let's see, that's the wind. This one is the left one, so this is field Leonard left. This one here is field Leonard right. And then the last one, where is it? Field here. This is field Leonard middle. And this one's got a dot in it. So we've got the left, the middle, and the right here. Left, middle, right. We'll click on the middle one. We'll go to its physics settings. Let's press Ctrl S to save it, and we'll set the strength to 10 as well. And we'll set the left one to 10. And then we'll set the right one to 10 as well. Inside the physics settings here, let's press Ctrl S to save it. Now, do we see this working? Let's see. We might have to bake this. Or press 0. Sometimes looking at it from the camera view helps as well. So we might have to bake this to see it properly. In theory, this should work. These should have an effect on the particles. So let's try and bake it to see if that makes any difference. So we'll click on our alien text, go to the particle settings here, and then we want to go to, let's see, where is it? Bake cache, and we'll say bake all dynamic. So it's going to bake that and memorize those particles or where they're moving. Let's go to File, Save. It's hard to see if those Leonard things are even doing anything here. So let's just click on them. Let's see where they're positioned. I don't know if because they're quite low, they're not really having much effect here, but they should do really. But let's press number 3. So that takes us into the side view. We'll go into the wireframe. And then we want to drag these up, right? So let's click on all 3. So we'll click on the left one, hold down the Shift key, click on the middle and the right one. So all 3 of these are selected. This is the fluid domain, and our text will be here somewhere, right? So we want to drag them up a little bit to here, so they'll be sitting in line with the text. Then we'll press 0 on our keyboard and go back into the render view. And then I think we need to rebake it. So let's go back to the alien text here, particles, free to bake, and bake it again. Let's go to these Leonards to see what they're set to. Okay, they still seem to be it. So let's click on this Leonard left middle, hold down the shift key, select all three of them. We can see them a bit better from here, and we'll drag them up so that they're in the path of these particles. And let's just go to the alien text, particles, free to bake, bake it again. I don't know if the wind is too strong for it to even have an effect on it. Let's go to our turbulence. So where's our turbulence? Turbulence here. Let's increase this anyway to around 10. We'll go back to the alien text, particles, free to bake. We can really bake this in real time, or at least simulate in real time. So I think that's going to be okay. But these Leonard, maybe they're not set high enough. Let's set these to like 30. Should have more effect on these particles, so I don't know, maybe if they're set too low. Or maybe they're a bit too far away, so let's click on all three of them. So I'm selecting all three here. Let's drag them a bit closer. Definitely in a good position, I'm not sure. So we may have to come back to that and look at that, but I think the particles look okay anyway. What I'm going to do though is press 0 to go into the camera view quickly, and in the particle settings, so let's go to the text. Where is the alien text here? We'll go to the particles and we're going to set it to something like 80,000, 80, 1, 2, 3, 80,000. So we're going to have a lot more particles now. 80,000 of them. That might be a bit overkill, right? Let's see. When do it out. I think our wind is way too high. Let's set this down to around 3. I think the force of the wind is pushing these particles too fast, so they're not having much effect on the I think they're just moving way too quick. Okay. Alright, I'm not really liking that, so I'm going to set this back to 10,000. Let's just bake it like that. I think we might just leave it like that. I was going to do some other things like make the text disappear and do some other things, but I think something like that might just be nice. Just like that, right? Something simple. So I think we're going to leave it like that. I think that's going to be cool. Let's just render it out on this frame. Yeah, I think I'll leave it like that because then you can see all the particles, and I think that's going to be cool. I think that's going to be good enough. Then let's turn back on the background here. Let's turn on our overlays here, and we'll click on this particle and just drag it off to the side here somewhere. We just want it to be at the camera view. Okay, so we mentioned we was going to put some sort of object in the background here, so maybe we try and do something like that. So what we'll do, I don't know if we've got space for it, but let's have a look. Let's press number 7 and then go into wireframe. And actually let's go into solid view and then turn on transparency. So when we turn this on, although we're in solid view, we can see that all the objects have a bit of transparency to them. So we can see we've got loads of space behind here to work with, so we're good for space. So let's take our 3D cursor and move the 3D cursor to somewhere like here. Then we'll press Shift A and we'll insert a let's do that down here. Shift A, insert a UV sphere, and then we're going to press S to scale. We're going to scale it up, make it quite large, and we're going to just use the move tool and we'll move it to somewhere around here. Then press 0 on our keyboard and we can see it's right up here. So really we want to drag that down so that it's behind these mountains or whatever you want to call them, and that is going to be this sphere here. So let's call that planet, and then we'll go into the render view and we can see it in the background. And what we might do is go to the material and we might set it to like this blue material, or we could set it to the fluid material. I think that looks pretty cool, but we could smooth shade it, but I think it's better to have it flat shaded because I kind of like the squares inside of it. So it's just about choosing the right material for it now really. We've got all these ones that we've pre-made, so we can select any of these. I kind of like the fluid material here, the one that's been used for the fluid. What we'll do is, let's see. So that shows pretty early in our scene, right? Around here, if we press F12, we'll see that object in the background. I'm not quite sure I want to see that all the way through here. Let's see what it looks like here. We might even remove it. I'm not convinced about that. We've got a lot of sharp angles here, right? Everything's quite sharp except for the fluid, and you've got this big round object in the background. I don't really like that, so I'm going to delete it. I think we just stick with the original background, but one thing I do want to do is we want to go to the first frame. We're almost done now basically. Let's save this. What we'll do, let's see, we'll go to the UV, actually what we'll do, we're going to move our mouse cursor to around here, yeah? You can see where my mouse cursor is. It turns into this X shape. And we're going to drag down. And in this viewport, we'll set the set it to render view here. Now, in fact, what we're doing, this top one, we're going to go to the shader view here, shader. So we can see the UV, or sorry, the shader editor here, and we can see the viewport down here in the render view. And what we want to do is go to the world settings here. So select world here, and we're going to zoom right in so you can see this a bit better. Let's zoom out here so we can see the full camera square here, and we zoom right into here. And right now the z-axis is set to minus 442.6. that's that particular angle of the HDRI image, right, to reflect all these lights and stuff. So we're going to hit the record button, and we're going to move to frame 1 here, frame 1, and we're going to move our mouse cursor over this Z and hit the letter I. That's going to insert a keyframe for this particular rotation here. Then we'll run through this, and we're going to get to around here. So on frame, let's say frame 350, we're going to rotate this slightly, only a little bit, a small amount, so that when it's running through this sequence here, that UV map is actually rotating between these positions, right? It's going to get to here, and then all the way down to frame, let's say, where are we, frame, around frame, 950, right? So let's do around frame, we can actually use here, frame 945, we'll move this slightly as well. So we're only moving it a few degrees, we don't want to move it too much. So it'd be easier to see this in the layout. So what you can do now is move your mouse cursor in between these two panels, like here. Then we can right click and say join area, and then move your mouse to the top here and click, and then that will join it all the way back to one big window again. We can file save, and then we can see those colors like rippling through the background here, right? Because we're twisting the UV map, we're rotating it, and we should be able to see a little bit of that. This is moving quite fast, so you might not see it so much, but it will be a little dynamic. And then we've got the fluid, and I think we're about done. I'm quite happy with this. So last frame is 950. Let's move to frame 950. Let's press F12 to render it. And that's what our very last frame is going to look like. The last thing we want to do is go to File, Save, then File, Save As, and save it as version 8. And then we want to click on the fluid, right, which was, where is it, water fluid here. And then we want to go to the modifier, and we want to add a modifier. Make sure you don't click anything here, just click add modifier here, and then do subdivision here, and set the render to 3 here. Then if we press F12, our fluid will look a little bit better, yeah? It will render out a little bit better. Maybe we can set this to a bit higher. Let's set quality and render to 4. Let's set it to 5. Let's see what that looks like. Should look better in theory. This is the viewport. I think I'm doing this right. No, we're doing this wrong, right? So let's click on this water fluid. We're doing this wrong. Let's get rid of this subdivision here. And I think we need to do it on the fluid domain here, the fluid domain. So click on fluid domain, click on the add modifier, then go to subdivision here. then set the render to 3. So if we set this, let's try and set it to 4 and press F12. It should take a little bit of time to render out. We can see what that water looks like. So this water should look a bit better when it's subdivided. It will just look a little bit better. Let's try and move to it. Let's press this record button here to turn off the record button. Let's render out this last frame, see what it looks like. And I think we're pretty good. We should just create this video now. I think we've done enough. So we'll leave these settings here and we'll go to File, Save. We'll go to the viewport here. The render samples we want to set to 120. Then everything here is good. We can leave it as it is. We'll go to the output and we're on frame 1 to 950, which is good. We're going to run it at 60 frames a second. We want to change it to AVI JPEG. We'll leave it at 90% here. The quality should be fine. We'll do the open folder, go to the desktop, and we're going to save it into here. So we'll click accept. We'll press Control and F12, and Blender will take the first frame, render it out. It's going to render out all of the frames. This is going to take some time. It's got quite a lot of stuff to do. So let's just make sure it gets through the first frame, and then we can just leave this. I'll pause the video and we'll come back and check it out. Okay, it's done the first frame. I can see it's on the second frame now, so I'll pause the video and we'll see what the end sequence looks like once we're done. Okay, so Blender's finished rendering out all the 950 frames. So we can see 950 up here. We can close this and go to File, Save. And now we can check out our final video. So let's close down the Blender application here. And on my desktop, I've got the folder. And inside this folder, we should have this new AVI file. So let's open that up and we can check out what this looks like. We'll leave it on repeat for now. And then we can see end result. So I think it's looking pretty good. There's a few things I would have probably changed in this. Then I'll explain what I would change and how to improve it slightly. But overall, I think it's a pretty good job. I quite like the way that it flows through the scene and then how the water dynamics come through. It's looking pretty cool. I like the spikes and stuff and these particles. So what would I do to improve this? I think at the start the camera blur is fine, so I quite like that. Maybe the background, right? This sphere that we created to surround the whole content. Maybe I would have made that a bit smaller so we've got more of this like haze sort of shape across the top, because it kind of disappears at this point, right? But you can see it quite well up here. So if you would have made the actual that sphere that surrounds all of this content smaller, you would have probably seen that for a lot longer, or adjust it or animate it somehow so that we keep that in the background. Then it gets to here, and I like the fluid dynamics here. Maybe I would have run that a little bit later, so you can see like as soon as you get over this little ridge here, the fluid dynamic is already started on this frame. So I would have probably started that a little bit later. I would have waited for it to kind of flatten out and then start that part of the animation. But we can see all the spikes appearing, the text appearing, everything looks pretty good. And the only other thing I would have done is wait for the particles to fade out, and then I would have probably done a camera blur at the end here. So I would have blurred it out at the end rather than just finishing like this. And that would have been similar to the blur at the beginning here. We just put that blur part at the end. But that's pretty much it. Otherwise, I quite like it. We'll watch it one more time quickly. So I think it looks all good. Hope you learned a lot from this tutorial, because I spent quite a lot of time explaining stuff, so you can use a lot of the knowledge that you've gained in this tutorial and go and make other stuff with Blender. Go and experiment. The more you play around with it, the more you're going to learn. You know, probably about 8 weeks ago I knew very little of Blender, and I've gone from knowing next to nothing to just experimenting and watching other tutorials and learning. And it's all about sharing knowledge, right? So that's the end of this tutorial. We'll close that down. Hope you enjoyed that tutorial, and I look forward to seeing you on the next DCP web tutorial.